So thank you very much everyone for coming. I'm David Zakian. I run Eat Drink Rhode Island. Some of you are familiar with me. I hope some of you came to last week's gubernatorial forum, which went very well. And tonight we have the mayoral forum with the candidate for mayor of Providence. And this is Kate Roberts. She owns this fantastic establishment here, Easy Entertainment. Kate, why don't you?
Everybody, all of our constituents here, and thank everybody for coming, because I know it's a very important part of the process to us as food industry providers and small businesses in Rhode Island. So we look forward to hearing what everybody has to say, and we look forward to seeing people back at the cafe again. So thank you so much for your time.
So I've just got a little bit of some figures here, some information on the food system here in Rhode Island, and many of it, while specific to the state, obviously since Providence is the capital and largest population center, it's a lot of it is very pertinent to Providence. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of that, and then we're going to jump right into questions for candidates. We've got a bunch of good questions here. Let me welcome, thank you very much to Dr. Dan Harrick, Jorge Lorza, Brett Smiley, City Council President Michael Solomon, and Chris Young. Thank you all very much for coming. So in Rhode Island during the last 10 years, industries involved in the purchase of meals and beverages grew from 1.6 billion to just under 1.8 billion. Jobs in the food services and drinking industries grew by 10%, and jobs in food and food-related occupations grew by 9.3%. These trends have been identified at the national level, and food and farming are referred to as anchor industries. These industries where growth is steady and sustainable, but returns are not as high as industries such as tech or medical, due to higher overhead expenses. But past economic developments in our state and capital city have almost exclusively gone to attract out-of-state businesses to come here, and typically have been focused on high-skill, high-wage job creation. This has left the state with a significant gap in low to middle-income job opportunities. But as you can see, the food industry continues to grow. Also, within food is health. And 64% of Rhode Island residents are either overweight or obese, and preventable diet-related chronic disease healthcare costs have created a nearly $2 billion annual burden on the state's economy. $2 billion, with total healthcare spending nearing 20% of the state's annual GDP. These costs are growing approximately 4% faster than inflation. So with those numbers in mind, and also the knowledge that this industry is growing, we're going to turn right to our first question. What we're going to do is we're going to start with Dr. Harrick on the end there for the first question, and the second question we'll start with Jorge, and so on, and revolve around, so everyone has a chance to answer first. Kate, do you want to tell them how the forum will work?
Okay. So we have 3 simple rules. It's a forum, not a debate. We're asking that you speak to us rather than directly to each other, so that everybody gets their fair time to speak. We're going to allot 90 seconds per question. I'll hold up my handy little tag here when you're 60 seconds in. And the red tag means stop. So we'll see how well
pay attention to Kate.
Yes. My mother was a school teacher. She's sitting over there, so we like that. So thank you very much.
All right, so the first question, Dr. Harrick, for all of you, how would you invest in sustainable anchor industries like food, where growth is steady and sustainable, but returns are not as high as tech or medical?
Well, I think that, as you clearly pointed out with your statistics, the food industry, the tourism industry, is one of the clear things that the state has been able to stay steady with, despite the economic downturn at this particular time. As we all know, Providence is financially troubled at this particular time. We don't have enough money to keep our schools warm, safe, and dry. That's a quote directly from the Providence School Department. We don't have enough money to fund our pension systems. Funding for any particular program is going to be a big issue. But I do think that we can really focus at this particular time on removing some of the blocks that businesses have in the city, food industry as well as others, to expand their industry as well as to expand and grow their industry. The city overhead, the paperwork, the difficulties getting licenses, the difficulties getting zoning permits in order to expand. I think that's a no-cost and easy way to begin to encourage local small businesses, of which most restaurants are, to really work with things. I am very much in favor of licenses that will allow restaurants to open later if they want. I know Mr. Solomon has one of just the 4 licenses in the city that allows his restaurants to stay open till 4 a.m. I think it would be nice if there were 40 such restaurants.
So, good evening, everyone, and thank you all so much for being here. I'm sure that all of us as candidates truly appreciate it. And there's so much that we can do to build up the local food culture, network, and industry here in Providence. And when you think of it, we have all of the raw ingredients to make it work. Now, think of our universities. We have, one of the best and premier culinary schools in the entire country. We have one of the best design schools in the entire world. And the synergies with culinary are very tight. Brown University has a wonderful entrepreneurship program. Roger Williams University has an aquaculture program. We forget that URI has a beautiful and a strong agriculture program. And so we have these raw ingredients. It's about bringing them together and aligning the city's interests with our existing strengths. Because we know that each one of these businesses, they have the potential for growth, but at the end of the day, they're small businesses. We have to streamline the permitting process at City Hall to make it as convenient and as easy for anyone to start a business as possible here in Providence. We also have to work with the permitting process to make sure that the dreaded fire department gets out of the way of so many small businesses and small restaurants that are looking to get started. But more than anything else, we also have a wonderful Grow Local movement. And we're shortening that pipeline and the length from the market from the farm to the market. And so there are a number of opportunities to support that industry that also brings community together. So we have all the ingredients to get it done. It's about aligning our mission with our strengths.
Thank you all for being here tonight. This really is one of the more exciting and frankly fun opportunities for us, because this is one of the bright spots. Hopefully everyone has at their seat a copy of my economic development plan, which we released back in March, and a highlight and a key component of that plan was our local food movement. And that's something that we've been talking about as a success for a year now in my candidacy. About how do we invest in this industry in a way that may have sometimes lower returns. It's up to the great people in this room to kind of accept, because of passion and love, whatever the returns may be, but the city's responsibility is to help shoulder some of the burdens that can create the environment in which everyone can succeed. So that starts with infrastructure. When we have infrastructure that allows you to be successful, which some of it is the nuts and bolts of basically better roads and more efficient permitting and fire inspections, but also things like affordable utilities and cheap, high-quality water, including the expansion of our Lots of Hope program and more community gardens so there can be more local growing opportunities. These all make for more success. The next thing we need to do a much better job of is marketing and promotion on behalf of the industry, and that's an appropriate role for the city. If we can help market on your behalf as a food destination, as a place where there's a growing movement, as a place where this should be a place where you should want to come and innovate, then we can help shoulder that cost for you. And the final place is to make sure that the existing programs are eligible and available. So, for example, our Providence Economic Development Partnership has been bogged down by politics. Too many of the loans have gone unpaid, and we need to make sure that that capital is available to lend to businesses like yours.
I want to thank you for having me here. I've been in the hospitality business for the last 30 years, so I think I can speak a little knowledgeable about the industry itself. And we all know 3 out of 4 restaurants don't survive the first 3 to 4 years. It's a challenge. We have some of the best chefs. We have some of the best bakers. Because you have a good chef or you have a good baker, it doesn't make them a good business owner. We need to be more supportive of the backroom, the business end of the business, of the business itself. We need to help businesses, we need to help guys who want to open up restaurants on the business end of it, chef that wants to open up a restaurant, a baker who wants to open up a bakery, where they have the knowledge of knowing how to bake, but don't know how to knowledge of running the business. And that's where I think we could be most effective, supporting businesses like that and helping them along the way. I've created jobs the last 3 to 4 years in the restaurant business. It's tougher today. The margins are a lot smaller than they were 10 years ago. If you look at the food cost today, it's through the roof. It's through the roof, which makes it much difficult for us. So we need to continue to look for ways to cut without cutting the quality of our products. And city services is good, but we need to have that back room, we need to give that business support. And I think that's important when someone's going to open up a business.
Thank you.
Well, everyone knows that insiders really run the city of Providence. Mr. Solomon had a $500,000 loan from the city at 1% interest. Can you guys get a loan like that to start a business and develop business in the city of Providence and then not pay it back for 27 years? It's a pretty good deal. Mr. Smiley was a lobbyist for Mr. Tavares, an advisor to both the Cicilline and Tavares administrations. Both have left the city with a $2 billion unfunded liability. Mr. Alorza received a judgeship, just like Angel Tavares did from David Cicilline, who he's supposed to be the appointee, the next mayor of the city of Providence. So the reality is that these things will not change in the city of Providence. Corruption will not change if the same people get elected time and time again. These insiders in politics have run the city into the ground, and they lie and they say everything you want to hear, but none of their promises come true. You know, Kate Roberts said that she wants streamlining in the city of Providence to improve the business climate in the city of Providence. Well, that's not going to happen because Mr. Solomon was on the city council, and he approved all of these restrictions on businesses in the city of Providence. These people are tied to prior or current administration or Brown University, and they're not going to try and create jobs in the city of Providence. So what we really need to do is elect somebody new that will focus on removing the $500 fee for corporations to form the city, to create a highway access off of 95, to develop a park for businesses to grow in the city of Providence, by Roger Williams Park, an aquarium project, a subway project, a tunnel project over 95, bringing federal jobs and federal money.
Thank you. Next question. As you know, David is working to open an Eat Drink RI Central Market, similar to Reading Market in Philadelphia or Pike's Place in Seattle, Washington. What will you do to ensure that that project is successful via financial assistance, real estate development, zoning, and regulations?
Okay. What do you need, David?
I didn't catch the very beginning of the question.
As you know, David, who is my co-moderator here,
Okay.
is working to open an Eat Drink RI Central Market.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry, that was me.
That's-
A little self-serving, I didn't want to ask it, but she wanted to ask. So yes, all right.
So it begins with recognizing the value in David's vision in this. I know that the Rhode Island Foundation has been supported through the Innovation Fellows Program, and it certainly aligns with our strategic interests here in the city. And so, you know, I say it somewhat in jest, but I also mean it somewhat seriously. You know, what do you need? What do you need, David? It's about recognizing that there's a lot of good energy already happening in this direction and supporting where it's taking hold and taking root. And so, you know, I'm very excited about the local food scene. And I've talked a great deal about the importance of this farm to market process. And I'd also like to work in ways that align directly with with the fundamental work that the city does. It's not just about farm to market, it's also about farm to school. And if we can find creative ways to integrate this work into what happens in the schools, now I think it would be a win-win situation all around. I've talked about full-service community schools, where we take this great energy that's already happening and literally bring it inside of the buildings. You know, if we can integrate this into the curriculum so that students are learning science along with growing their own vegetables. And every study tells us that if kids have a role in growing their own food, they make wiser and smarter food choices. And so to the previous question about the health concerns, or at least the introduction about the health concerns, you know, this has the potential to really benefit so many aspects of what we're doing already in the city, and I look forward to supporting you, David, and your efforts.
Thank you.
You know, I agree that this is in fact a core competency here in Providence and something that's part of what makes us unique and economically viable, and it's the kind of projects that we should be investing in and helping, but honestly it shouldn't it shouldn't be because we know you and because it got asked at a forum. It should be every business with a viable business plan, meaning a successful industry or a place for which we have a comparative advantage, that we roll out the red carpet. And this is what we don't do currently. And so I have a small business of my own. I have 4 employees in a small accounting firm on North Main Street. And I know how difficult it is to get even the simplest things done in City Hall. Frankly, it's impossible to go and try to do the right thing, to go and try to pay taxes and to go try and pay a permit fee. And so, you know, what we can do for this project is what we should be doing for every viable project, which is to expedite services at City Hall, to try to make it as close to one-stop shopping as possible, to have a customer service mentality so that you're greeted at the door as someone with whom we want to do business as opposed to a problem that has to be dealt with. And that we have loan programs that are available and other programs that are available based upon the merit of the idea and the creditworthiness of the borrower and the quality of the business plan, not based upon political relationships or who's related to who or who knows who. And so this is what I would do for this project, but it's what I would do, frankly, for every project, because that's one of the things that holds us back as a city.
Thank you.
David, I wholeheartedly support you, but I have to answer this question that he raised a couple of minutes ago. David, we start making accusations. I want to say that to be able to defend myself. That loan that was taken up, that economic development loan that was taken up in 1988, one of 2 loans. Corporation that it was a high-risk loan. And the job of that loan was to spur economic development and create jobs. And that loan did that. We went through 3 recessions. And I continue to pay on that loan. And I've spent millions of dollars above and beyond. And that showed my commitment to the city of Providence. And I continue to pay the terms of the loan today. And this year alone, we knocked $50,000 off the principal. And I've yet to realize 1 cent of that project. And I'm a minority shareholder in the corporation of that project. So that's where I stand. When people start throwing accusations at me, I have to defend myself. And, you know, it's unfortunate we're up here that the forum's going to turn into a debate. But I support you. I support programs like that. Economic development is a tool that we use, okay, where you can't get bank financing. That's what the PEP is made for restaurants, for businesses, so we can promote, to create jobs and spur economic development. We support those programs and we support, you know, obviously your program.
Thank you.
Well, Michael, you'll have plenty of time to defend yourself before the Ethics Commission, where the situation is now currently before. Mr. Smiley, by the way, who says he doesn't know anyone, he's not part of any NOAA guy. I don't know how much more NOAA guy he can be than to be an advisor to both Cicilline and Tavares, and then be a lobbyist for Tavares. I mean, and then his father-in-law owns part of one of the strip clubs in Providence, you know? The Cadillac lounges have been investigated by the FBI for their ties to organized crime. How much more NOAA guy can you possibly
Chris, answer the question, please.
I was answering the question. You know, if you're working for another campaign, or...
I'm not for any campaign.
Well, I didn't get that question. I didn't get that question in advance.
You're debating.
Obviously, my opponents got the question in advance, but I didn't get the question. So the efficacy of this forum is in question.
I put this back together.
He's reading off of a script. He was reading off of his script. So please, when we're talking about forums and integrity and the future of the city of Providence and business growth, we can't talk about it unless we talk about the insiders who corrupted and collapsed this city and raised property taxes on residents and commercial businesses. We're the one that highest property taxes in the country.
In my place of business, I would really appreciate if you would stick to the topic.
Well, the topic is property taxes. That's what you said to me.
We're not talking about property taxes.
We're talking about benefiting your business and lowering property taxes for your business.
No, we're not.
Don't you care about lower property taxes for your commercial business?
That's not the question.
We have
We don't have time for this. Honestly, we do not have time for this. We asked a specific question about starting new businesses in Providence. I asked you to please stay on that topic. None of the candidates have any questions.
I support the development of your marketing.
I'm not interested in that answer anymore.
You're not interested
We're done.
anymore, David?
We're going to move on to
I'm
Dr.
not really interested in you and giving questions to my opponents and setting up fake forums where everyone is supporting the opposing candidates who will just do the same thing to the city.
None of these candidates received anything.
Oh, please. Please, we have a $2 billion unfunded liability in this state. And it's because of this administration.
No one received anything in advance, you all received the exact same emails. I sent everything myself. Everyone received the same
I'm
information.
sure.
I'm sure.
Dr. Eric, you can move on, please.
Well, just to pick up on some of the topics some of the other candidates said, I think that it's true that there is too much overhead in the city to starting a new business. The Republicans have, through several election cycles, urged the city council to adopt a 30-day sunset rule. Get your permit in, you get everything ready, and the zoning board must approve your permit within 30 days, must deny it within 30 days or it's approved. The licensing must be denied within 30 days or it's approved. The bad news, I mean, as I said before, is we have little money. The question is how we actually financially support you until we get the city finances in better shape. I have been very critical of the PEDP because of the way it's been run and the number of loans that have gone under, and talked about perhaps it really needs to be dissolved and reorganized. I am not opposed to small business loans and doing what the PEDP was essentially meant to do. I just have great difficulties with some of the functioning at this particular time. So, easy permitting, easy zoning, city loans for small businesses to start at the present time. And I think that's the way we can go, given the limited resources that the city has at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now a question near and dear to Kate's heart. We'll start with Brett Smiley on this one. In moving Easy Entertaining from Pawtucket to Providence, we, Kate's business, needed to transition our existing licenses and wanted to obtain a beer and wine license. This took over 8 months, and Easy Entertaining was already an established 6-year-old business. How do you plan to streamline these processes?
Great, yeah, and this is a problem, and this is a problem in all industries, and it gets back to the remaining difficulties that we have in just helping business people in our city. One of the first things that we need to do more broadly is actually start to work with our neighbors. I think for too long in Rhode Island and in Providence, we've been looking at Pawtucket and East Providence as our competition and competing with them as opposed to actually collaborating with them. If we're going to succeed as a state, it's going to be because we're competing with Austin and Pittsburgh and Jacksonville and these other major metropolitan areas. And so what I want to do is actually collaborate with the other urban mayors, and so that we can start to align regulations so that if you're a business owner in Metro Providence, what it takes to operate your business is as close to parity in all of the neighboring communities, so that if you do decide to move, or even better, expand, that what it takes to open that second location in East Providence is the same requirements for what you have here in Providence. And so by working with our neighboring mayors, we can actually start to play on a bigger playing field, because we're never going to be successful if all we're doing is squabbling with our neighbors and keeping businesses from moving to Pawtucket or to North Providence. We need to all start working together. And then that gets back to the second piece, is the more fundamental reforms that we've talked about already, which is a more business-friendly attitude, a customer service orientation in City Hall, and a real welcoming of folks coming in the door at City Hall, that they are treated like someone who is going to help solve our challenges here, as opposed to someone who is a challenge.
Thank you.
Hey, I don't know why it took you 8 months to get a liquor license.
Well, me neither, Mr. Thomas.
That's unheard of. It's unheard of. You go before the licensing board, fill out the applications. Obviously, there had to be more to it. 8 months. 8 months is a long time. to get
Well, you take a lot of time
transfer.
for the holidays. That was part of it, right?
It was, yeah, I
Take
guess.
like the vacations
8 months,
around
it shouldn't take 8 months.
I totally
It
agree.
doesn't, it shouldn't take 8 months, and I can't imagine being in the business myself, knowing anyone that has companies that, they will wait 8 months to have a liquor license transfer. So, it must be some underlying problem that held it up for 8 months. But obviously, we want to be a business-friendly city, and we'll do the things that we have to do to make sure that that doesn't happen. And if it does happen, that you have somewhere to go to, and you have somebody to see. So we do have that problem, pick up the phone and call. And I think that's probably something you may have been lacking at the time. Got to call your councilman.
Thank you. Mr. Young?
Well, there are no specifics coming from my opponents. They say absolutely no specifics on how to change Kate's problem. Okay? Took her 8 months to get her transfer. So we would set up something in the city where it would take no more than 3 months. okay? And then if it was longer than 3 months, like Domino's, right? Domino's Pizza, she'll get her licensing fee free. Now, there's different ways that we can incentivize businesses in the city of Providence when the administration is incompetent and when there's these problems with people taking long vacation days or sick days, and so that some other people can take sick days and get overtime and all the other things that are going on in the city of Providence that are driving it into the hole that it's in. Real solutions come from someone who's willing to bring those solutions forward. When I've run for mayor before, where I received 26% of the vote in 2006 for mayor of Providence, I brought forward the development of food vending trucks in the city of Providence. Greg might remember that. Greg won the elections for mayor of Providence. So when you come forward with ideas, it's possible that your opponents will take your ideas and make them their own, right? But the reality is that the person who comes forward with the idea is the innovator, and together we can make these things happen. It's the businesses that created the vending trucks that came together to make that happen. The city has to do more to accommodate businesses to grow in the city of Providence, more to create jobs, like offering businesses who want to locate here with 500 employees free taxes for 10 years.
Thank you.
Well, the better, Mr. Young, I've already said 30 days to get the licenses of the sunset. I've tried to add a porch onto my house last year. It was fully approved, everything was done, it was ready to go. It took me 7 months to get zoning to approve a porch that none of my neighbors objected to. So there my money sat, and there the workers sat without that, and the chief of the zoning board, who happens to live the next street over, he even came over to look at the place and said, oh, this is fine. But there were a variety of problems at City Hall. One engineer was sick and the other engineer couldn't do it. And even though I had a licensed engineer, that's been the typical thing with this type. When I ran for mayor 8 years ago, this was a big part of the campaign, was to try to simplify services and simplify these type of licenses, zoning and licenses. And it's what you'll hear when we appeared before the laborers union. They said one of the problems they're getting to have people build on the Route 95 land that is opened up is not just the sky-high commercial property taxes, second, the highest in the nation for 2 years running, but the licensing, the permitting, the zoning, the difficulty with the paperwork to get anything done. And there has to be an ombudsman, not just at City Hall, but with each and every department, licensing, zoning, etc., in order to move these things through before the 30-day sunset principle goes into effect.
Thank you.
So I agree with many of these ideas, and this problem, what was it, 7 or 8 months to get the license approved. I truly believe that that's something that's endemic of the bigger problems that we have in City Hall. Many months ago, I released my city services plan here in the city, and part of the city services plan was to create a chief innovation officer. We're only 12 years removed from the Cianci administration, and Cicilline came into City Hall, and Cicilline was a reformer, but he was digging us out of such a mess that it was hard to really make progress and establish professional administrative systems. Angel's been in office for the past 4 years. First 2 years, he was occupied with a fiscal hurricane. Last 2 years, he's been focused on running for governor. So we've never fully been able to take a deep, hard look inside of City Hall and figure out why is it that this paper, sits on this desk and takes 2 weeks to follow to get to the next desk, and then another week before it makes it to the next one. And so this Chief Innovation Officer will have the authority and the responsibility to go to every single department and agency within City Hall and figure out how we can make our administrative processes more efficient. I'm an accountant, a public accountant specifically, and that's exactly what we do. And that's the kind of aptitude, the kind of that mentality that we have to bring. It can't just be about calling the person that you know down at City Hall. You can't just call your council people. We can't rely on that. They have to be professional administrative systems, and that's something I'm committed to making sure we bring to every aspect of City Hall.
Thank you.
Next question. Let's start with Madam Solomon.
As mayor, do you consider promoting food and drink within the Office of Art, Culture, and Tourism?
Absolutely. That's our number one attraction right now. I know when I drive down 95 on Friday night or Saturday night at 7 o'clock, majority of the cars that are getting off at 95, cars that are coming in from Massachusetts, all over New England. You know, we're known for our culinary, our restaurants, and, you know, so we need to continue to promote them in a way that nobody else does. I mean, we have better restaurants, you know, people perceive Providence as the greatest restaurants in New England, something in the United States, and we'll continue to promote that. I think there's a lot of room for improvement. We need to promote on the national, not just in New England, I think on the national, that Providence would be a global food destination. So, and we'll continue to do that.
Well, I've already started. My daughter Mary has a little cupcake on her outfit here, so if you want to take a look. My wife Kara was the director of marketing for the Dunkin' Donuts Center, and well, she was director of sales at the Dunkin' Donuts Center, director of marketing at the Ryan Center, and the Arena. And she made millions of dollars for the state, marketing that facility, and so I learned a little bit through osmosis from my wife, and my wife is very creative, and marketing is key to developing our tourism and food industry in the city of Providence. And we have the best food, and I'm a little bit biased, you know, but like I think most of us here are, in the country, and we need to really market that appropriately. So businesses that are located in Providence should have a seat on a council that oversees a marketing budget for small businesses. This is another specific that my opponents won't target. They target those specifics because they're going to get elected probably, and they don't want to be tied down to anything that they'll actually do to help you. You know, and I actually have specifics about what we can do for the city of Providence to improve the business environment, and I'm not tied into this machine that these individuals are tied into. Ethics and other issues are definitely important when you consider the development of the food industry in Providence. But when you have businesses that have been here for a long period of time, one is a pastry business that has a manufacturing facility, but he's been almost forced to shut down. He can't really market his products within the New England region because the tax environment is too oppressive for him. We have to lower the commercial property tax. You know, it's ridiculous how high it is, and we have to go after people who pay no taxes like Brown.
So two things on this. Obviously, yes, obviously this is one of the things I think we started out with, that this is a major draw of tourists to our state, which is the food industry and the like. I think it's in one sense, it's really a state issue, and certainly the city needs to join in on that, but it's really, I think, too localized for for Providence. I think you really need to work with the state, work with the other areas of the state as well, in order to get people here to really enjoy it. Whether it's the beaches during the summer or it's the foliage during the fall, together with the restaurants as well. And the state has fallen down a bit on this in recent years, and I think the city and the mayor needs to really be an advocate for pushing this further once he gets into office. I think also you have to be very careful. We've seen some problems, obviously, with zoning up on Federal Hill. I think the food service industry, the tourism industry that you hope to develop, you need to take very careful with what you do with that. The difficulties on Federal Hill need to be fixed. That needs to be more dining. It needs to be not bars. I have no problem with bars in the city, but the bars need to be coordinated in a different section of the city and not have them next to each other because of the trouble that can occur. So the answer is yes, which I think we're all saying at this particular time. And I think that we need to work with the state, and we need to be very careful to support the restaurants we have now.
Doctor, I'm glad you brought up Federal Hill, and the answer to the specific question is yes, absolutely, of course. You know, when many years ago, when I would travel to different places in the United States, if people knew one or two things about Rhode Island, they knew Newport and they knew Federal Hill. Yeah, but Federal Hill has truly lost its stature, its luster. And those are efforts that perhaps the state is responsible, but I think that more so we at the city level are responsible for. We need a long-term vision, not just for Federal Hill, but for how the city is going to promote and market itself as an arts and culture destination, and also as a foodie destination. You know, food tourism is becoming an emerging industry, and we have, again, all of the raw ingredients already in place. We don't have to create it anew. We have it there in place, and it's a matter of simply growing what we have. And I've sat down and I've spoken with the Federal Hill Merchants Association, and what I've recommended to them is that we have a phenomenal foodie scene, and a number of restaurant owners. They're all part of the same community. Federal Hill would do well by merging and building relationships with this community and with this culture. And another point that isn't mentioned as often is that not only do we have a wonderful foodie scene here in Providence, we also have a wonderful cocktail scene here in Providence. And there are a number of bars and restaurants that are already, quote unquote, cooking up some wonderful cocktails. We have to actively promote this as well.
Thank you.
Well, I think this is great that we're all in agreement on this, and the answer is yes. If you, when you go home today, if you look at the blue economic development plan, we've highlighted the arts, culture, and tourism section, which includes our food industry. This is, I think, integral to what that department is supposed to be about, and absolutely should be a priority moving forward in terms of city promotions. In the midst of all of this, though, because I think we agree, and it's great to talk about promoting this as a food destination, to supporting and marketing and selling the incredible restaurants, but our food scene is more than just our restaurateurs. There's also growers and producers and markets in our city that are, in fact, quite unique and a really growing and thriving industry. There are some incredible producers in our city that are making their own specialty meats and specialty foods and specialty beverages that are exporting them from here as well. And so it should, in fact, fall under the guise of this department to not just promote tourism and someone taking the time to go to dinner at a restaurant, but to actually support and sell the growth of these growers and producers that are also going to put Providence on the map.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next, we're going to start with Christian on the next question.
Providence now has an office of sustainability with a food component encompassing urban agriculture and food processing, as well as a zero waste component covering composting. How do you plan to grow this office for the benefit of the citizens of Providence?
Well, I mean, PBS did a really great special on the development of farms related to schools. You know, in our school system, we can have farms for our students to build the confidence up, to build their own businesses. They can grow their own food. But the problem is that a lot of the land in Providence is contaminated. Even some of the schools have been constructed on former dump sites. I've written legislation with Victor Moffitt to stop these schools from being built on toxic sites where the toxins have caused at one school 9 teachers to have cancer. So we have to have complete oversight when it comes to this. Insiders getting contracts, food contracts to the schools, or insiders who get the marketing money that will be allocated by the city. And these advertising firms like the RW Group or other organizations like that will steal this money. And the money really won't go toward, not steal, but you know, they will use the money according to their expenses and expenditures, you know, to the best of their ability, which means that very limited marketing will occur for the city of Providence. So what we really need to do is stop the insiders and make a more visible bidding process where you can see the actual bids. And if you want to overbid on that, you can bid on it, but you can see the bid. Why can't we show the bids? You know, we should be able to, people should be able to see the bids and be able to bid accordingly to their business and enterprise.
Thank you.
Well, this is probably not the answer you're going to want to hear, but you know, part of my campaign has been that the city is not looking at its budget correctly. It's not really, it's got schools that are unsafe, it's got a pension plan that it's not being funded and down the line. While I certainly agree with the goals of the program that you mentioned, I don't think it's going to be possible to put any additional money or to expand that at this particular time. I also have a feeling that, I also have an opinion that the city should be a city, that it should be a densely populated, a densely built for industry and business. I have no problem with those goals being expanded regarding the state, and the state coming in and the state working to achieve those goals on a statewide level. I do not feel that we're going to be able to expand that office at the present time, given the dire state of the finances of the city.
Thank you.
So we have to support urban agriculture. I used to be a judge here in the city, and as a judge, the bane of my existence on the court was the abandoned properties that we have throughout Providence, 500 abandoned properties. And some of you know, I went really hard against the banks to make sure that we were bringing those homes back online. But there's a wonderful program Brett mentioned earlier, Lots of Hope, happening that's already underway here in Providence, where we take abandoned or vacant public land and we use it for community gardens and for urban farms. And it's just such a wonderful program. It teaches us to make much more efficient use of our public space. And it also has a wonderful composting program attached to it. So we certainly want to continue the work that's being done there. And of course, we have to support the work of the Southside Community Land Trust. And that has so many benefits, but one of the benefits that can't be discounted is the economic benefit that it provides. It does most of its work in low-income neighborhoods. And in these neighborhoods, people are already living on the margins. And if they can grow their own food, every dollar counts and it makes a big difference. But there's also a strong community component to it as well, in at least a couple of ways. And I've visited many of these community gardens, and you talk to the growers, and they're folks from Bhutan or they're folks from Liberia, and it makes all the difference in the world to be able to grow your own vegetables that you won't be able to buy at any local grocery store. And I've seen elders from Bhutan and elders from other countries, work directly with young people, and there's so much wisdom that they have to pass on. It's beautiful to see community coming, so we have to support urban agriculture.
Thank you.
The city's Office of Sustainability really is one of the success stories of this administration. I often say that the Public Communities Office and the Sustainability Office are kind of the two best functioning offices in the city right now. And Sheila Dormany there does fabulous work, and I'm committed to continuing that important work. I was chair of the Water Supply Board, and the city has out right now a draft citywide sustainability plan, which is the first time we've ever had that as a city that's an outcropping of this office. And I sat on the water working group. And this is an area where I think I can agree with our Republican friend, because the Office of Sustainability actually is going to save money and make us more economically viable by talking about water conservation and diverting waste from food waste from the waste stream, by promoting recycling, by installing green roofs and in our public buildings. We can actually reduce expenses and make this a more sustainable city and a more economically viable city. And all of that work comes through the Office of Sustainability. The work that we're doing here in Providence really can be a model. I'm pleased that my husband and I compost at home, but we need to have a vision for that to be citywide. I'm glad that the city has made progress on its recycling rate, but we have a long way to go. There are some exciting ways in which we can green our buildings, particularly starting with our school buildings in conjunction with needed renovations. But we have to start that work, and all of that work will be driven by the Sustainability Office in my administration.
Thank you.
The Sustainability Office, that was created by the Providence City Council. I supported the ordinance, co-sponsored the ordinance to create that office in the city of Providence. We continue, as a matter of fact, community gardens, we've done more community gardens in the last 3 years that have been done in previous years before that. So we'll continue to move forward with sustainability, doing outreach, doing community gardens. Now we're going to do a greenhouse type, which is in the works. So we'll continue to work to expand on those.
All right, we have time for one more question. We do a random number choice, and number 1 came up, so Dr. Harris, going to start off with the next question. How would you increase the amount of fresh, healthy, local food sold in Providence, which would reduce healthcare costs due to hunger, poor nutrition, and obesity?
Well, I think the farmers markets already do an excellent job with some of this as well. I would certainly look to see if that could be expanded and that additional sites could be used, whether our school sites or the city-owned sites could do that. I would certainly encourage them throughout the week, which is not necessarily the case at this particular time. There are some during the week, but certainly not every day. And I would certainly, again, work with the state regarding bringing in locally, within 50 miles to bring in the foods that we need to do that. I would like to see as well that there be further subsidies regarding food, and that people be able to use some of the subsidies to buy food, means-tested subsidies obviously as well. I'd also like to see the meals in schools develop this as well, and to be able to use locally grown foods to improve some of the meals that the students have been getting and other people for the foods at this particular time. The variety of things I think we can do working with the states and the state and our local community in order to achieve this goal.
Thank you.
So our vendors in the public schools, they're already required to source at least 15% of their products locally. So we have to make sure that it's not just written into the contract, but there's teeth to it, making sure that we hold them to that standard. And slowly and gradually, we make sure that we increase that to 15, 20, 25, perhaps even 30% of all the food that they source to the city. Second, we also have to incorporate this into our community schools and teach the importance of healthy lifestyles and healthy nutrition to our parents and to our children, by bringing some of these initiatives, by bringing Farm Fresh into the schools and incorporating them into the curriculum and into the work that we're doing inside of the school buildings. And then there's another great initiative that hasn't fully taken off, but has wonderful potential, and that's the Healthy Corner Stores initiative. Every single child, or virtually every single child in Providence, lives within walking distance of a grocery store, but not every single child in Providence lives within walking distance of a store where they can buy healthy foods. And what this initiative has been doing is it works with local grocers to make sure that when children walk in, there are healthy options and fresh foods available to children at eye level and not pushed over in the back. And we have to continue to move this forward so that every single child has ready access to these healthy foods.
Thank you.
Yeah, we do need to continue to expand access to healthy foods throughout our city, and we have pockets that are still food deserts in Providence where we need to offer and provide expedited permitting and work with zoning to allow for the solving of this problem, because there's too many kids, particularly in low-income neighborhoods in our city, where they don't have access to healthy, affordable local foods products. We need to continue to work with federal and state partners to make sure that other benefit programs like EBT are accepted at our farmers markets and at other local vendors, so that we can provide a healthy alternative through any form of payment. And then finally, I think that there's a bigger picture that we can play. One of the things that we need as a city to grapple with is how we define our relationships with the nonprofits in our city. So half of the land in Providence is tax exempt between the colleges, the universities, the hospitals, and state government. One of the things that I've been key on negotiating over is to start to negotiate over goods and services as opposed to negotiating over cash payments in order to get more. The hospitals, for example, we should be negotiating with them over what percentage of local vendors they're going to incorporate into their supply chain. And that's a way to introduce markets to our nonprofits and to have them partner in the economic success in our city and actually provide for a healthy base for business here to allow for the expansion of opportunities.
Thank you.
I think for the most part, we all agree. We've expanded our farmers markets, our community gardens, make our stores more aware of the fresh groceries that they should be carrying. Like Brent said, we don't have a lot of grocery stores or fresh fruit, fresh vegetable stores in a lot of neighborhoods. We've expanded. And we talked about the indoor community gardens, which can run all year round, which I think is important. But just making access, having the accessibility to have those products made available, no matter what neighborhood it is. We need to have those products made available, whether it's through our stores, community gardens, our markets, just all about expansion.
Well, Jorge Lourdes has said that Federal Hill has lost its luster. Well, the truth is, I was there on Saturday night. I was taking out someone from church, and And Federal Hill is just as hot as it's always been. The streets really popping and stuff. But what people remember of Federal Hill, the open marketplace, the place where food was sold, I believe that that needs to return to the Hill. So there needs to be a day or so where the streets shut off and a big open market is opened on Federal Hill in renaissance, in remembrance of what the Hill used to be, the culture of the Hill. We need to establish the historic culture of our cities, our neighborhoods in our city, and develop our city in that capacity. As we build the city and grow a subway project and a project over 95, or development of the waterfront, making the port an access point to ship our products out, but also expand jobs, but also do it in a planned way. That's why we have a strategic economic development plan with specifics on how to make those things happen. So we want to develop hotels and business development in the waterfront, but we want to make access points for businesses that are currently there to expand their businesses that are currently there. And none of these things have happened under the prior administration. So we need a new administration that will bring forward what Providence really can be, and restore the Renaissance, and rebuild the city, and bring Providence back to life.
Thank you.
All right, so I want to give each candidate a chance for some closing remarks, 90 seconds for closing remarks. We, again, randomize the 5 names and put them into this order. Mr. Smiley, Mr. Loza, Mr. Young, Mr. Solomon, Mr. Harris. So Mr. Smiley, you can start.
Great. Thank you all for being here tonight. The election is 3 weeks from tomorrow, and this is in fact a really nice night for us because this is an exciting bright spot in our local economy. I'm running because I've had a chance to work for the last 2 administrations. I've seen the hard-fought reforms that we've made to turn the page from the corrupt days of the Cianci administration, and we can't go backwards to those. Mayor Taveras didn't solve our problems, he just bought us a window of time, and we have to take advantage of that, which is why I started out early with a detailed and actionable economic development plan. Our food industry is one of the things that's working, but there's a lot more that we need to do in order to make this a healthy and successful city. I've had a chance to work in city halls. I've worked at the State House. I've chaired a public agency and actually sat at labor negotiating tables. I now run my own business. I'm ready to go from the beginning, and I am entirely committed to doing this job. I don't think the Providence Mayor's office should be a stepping stone to higher office, which is why I've been quite clear from the beginning that if fortunate enough to be elected, that I would serve 2 full terms. I love this city. There's nowhere else I'd rather be. If this were a traditional job, I'd apply for it because I know what needs to be done. I'm willing to make the hard choices necessary to see us be successful in the future. And on September 9th, in the Democratic primary, I'd like to ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Loza.
So in every decision that I'll make as mayor, and in every plan that I've proposed, I've been guided by these 3 principles. First, we're going to rebuild trust in local government. I'm an accountant, and I've also been a judge, and I know that transparency and a commitment to ethics is paramount in everything that we do at City Hall. Second, we're going to build off of our strengths. And the food, tourism, arts, and culture industry, that's certainly one of our great strengths. And there's so many different aspects to it. You know, from supporting urban growers that bring community together, to supporting food startups that are high-growth industries, and to bringing year-round farmers markets to Providence with the good help of David and Farm Fresh as well. You know, we can make this happen and grow upon all of the ingredients that we already have in place. The third principle that I'll be guided in every decision that I make at City Hall is we're going to build in a way that's inclusive of the great diversity that we have here in the city. And perhaps there's no better way to bring people together than around food, cuisine, and maybe a couple of cocktails. And so this fits perfectly into the vision that we have for the city, which is about bringing folks together. I'll be the first person to say, I don't have all of the answers, and I believe no one person can have all of the answers. But what's embedded in every single proposal that we put out is that the only way we're going to tackle the great challenges that we have in the city is by bringing people together and thinking big about the great possibilities we have here in Providence. And I would be honored to be your mayor, and I'd be honored to earn your support.
Well, we need to bring Providence back to life, but not a culture of corruption, a culture of insider deals, a culture that allows for gang violence and crime on our street, We need to address the issues of the current administration, leaving the city $2 billion in debt. None of them have mentioned it. They completely ignored the debt of the city, which is going to affect property taxes, commercial taxes, and residential taxes if the city goes into receivership. None of them address the serious issues that the city's facing. It's a lot of fluff. So the reality is that we need to repeal the car tax in the city of Providence, to make it more affordable for our vending trucks to do business in the city. We need to provide space for them to locate, and the city can take a percentage of the sales if it's off of the 95 land that we own. And then we need to lower the residential property tax, lower other taxes, and we have to go after the utility companies that are overbilling on businesses, and there's no accountability. The Public Utilities Commission, it's an insider deal there, and the businesses in our community have no voice. I'd like to be the voice for you, to defend you and bring business and jobs back into the city of Providence. Lower your taxes instead of raising them. Every administration has raised your taxes. Cicilline, Tavares, they all make promises, then your taxes go up.
Solid.
I love this city. I'm invested in the city. I'm committed to the city. I was born here. I was raised here. Went to school here. Started my businesses here. Providence has been my whole life. I tell people all the time that my lessons, life's lessons I learned at my father's here up the street. Lessons of hard work, small businesses, and the roles they play in the community. 4 years ago I became the council president. The same day Angel Tavares became mayor. Immediately we were faced with a $110 million structural deficit. If we did nothing, this city was going to go bankrupt. And we knew the old way of doing things wasn't going to work. And we weren't going to kick the can down the road. We made tough decisions. Tough decisions. Some of them were politically unpopular, but we made those decisions because it was the right thing to do for our city. Because we made those decisions, today we have a $1.6 million operating surplus year-end. But we need to move our city forward. We need to do it with a vision. And the vision that I had back in January, I said that we would start to rebuild our public schools. They're crumbling, they're falling apart. And rebuilding our public schools are going to give us quality schools. And quality schools give us quality neighborhoods, create 2,000 jobs. And that's what my campaign's about. Schools, jobs, and neighborhoods. So I ask for your vote on September 9th. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr.
Well, the Republican gets cleanup, I guess. I don't really care what you do in 3 weeks. The election is really 3 weeks and 2 months from now. I'm the only one going through to November, for sure. I'm a psychiatrist by profession, but I have an MBA. I've run major mental health institutions, hundreds of employees, millions of dollars worth of budget. I ran for mayor 8 years ago. I predicted at that time that the pensions were not going to come true, and I told the municipal unions that, and I was right, and they were wrong, and the mayor at that time was wrong. The COLAs were cut, the health benefits were cut. Mayor Tavares took us from a Category 5.0 hurricane to a Category 4.5 hurricane, and the winds are starting to pick up again. We have a $2 billion deficit in our pension fund, PolitiFact at 1.2, but new accounting rules will show us that we'll have to show $2 billion. We have schools that the city school department says are not warm, safe, and dry, and we expect parents to send our children to those schools. When I kid my Democratic opponents because I say, these proposals are wonderful. And when I become mayor, I'm going to take all these proposals and put them in a book and say, that's how we're going to run the city when we get the money. And the only way we're going to get the money is to bring the city through the uncomfortable process of receivership and bankruptcy to clear away a number of the unjust pensions and unjust tax stabilization plans that have been given. Please vote Republican in November.
Thank you very much. I want to assure the Democratic candidates that was a random choice on the ordinary candidate. Thank you very much to Dr. Jen Harris, Maria Orza, Brett Smiley, Michael Sullivan, and Chris Young for their time and their answers this evening. Reminder, if you didn't know, the Democratic primary is in 3 weeks from tomorrow. So please vote. Thank you very much to our host, EJ Standing. Thank you, Kate. please join us now, and thank you all very much for coming.